Latest NASCAR news. If you think this NASCAR weekend in Texas has been uneventful, you clearly haven't seen what just happened in the last few hours. Bubba Wallace's day took a brutal turn right before the race even started, and the story behind it goes far beyond a simple accident. Christopher Bell just let loose with a rant that the entire NASCAR world needs to hear, and he didn't mince words. And Kyle Busch? The move RCR just made in pit number 8 says it all about how desperate the situation has become. Sign up so you don't miss a thing. Let's start with Bubba Wallace and a situation that could completely change this weekend. Let's talk about Bubba Wallace, because before a single green flag dropped at Texas Motor Speedway, his weekend already went sideways in the worst possible way. During Cup Series practice for the Worth 400, Bubba lost control of his number 23 Toyota, spun around, and backed hard into the wall. Severe damage, car torn up, and just like that, the mood around the 23SX racing garage shifted completely. Now here's what makes this hurt even more. Bubba came into this weekend on a genuinely good vibe. Like, things were actually looking up for the guy. Earlier this week, it was announced that Coca-Cola is back in his corner. That's not just a sponsorship deal, that's a reunion. Coca-Cola was with Bubba back in his earlier Cup Series days, from 2018 all the way through 2020. Then he moved on. 23 weeks got rolling with Dr. Pepper on board, and life went on. But now, the band is back together, and the timing of it felt like a sign that things were trending in the right direction for the number 23 team. And honestly, the on-track results have backed that feeling up. Bubba has been putting together one of the most consistent stretches of his career so far in 2026. 5 top 10 finishes already on the season. He's been sitting inside the top 10 in points. Yeah, teammate Tyler Reddick has been absolutely on fire and grabbing most of the headlines. But Bubba has been right there, grinding, staying in the mix, not making noise but making moves. That consistency didn't come from nowhere either. You have to remember, this is a guy who went through a brutal 100-race winless streak before finally breaking through at the Brickyard 400 last summer. That kind of drought either breaks a driver or builds him into something tougher. For Bubba, it clearly did the latter. He came out of that with a different mentality, a real understanding of how fast things can flip in this sport. "The sport is so hard," he said recently. "When you're on it, you're on it. We're close, close." That word keeps coming up when Bubba talks about where his team is right now, and it doesn't sound like empty talk. It sounds like a guy who genuinely believes the breakthrough is right around the corner. He's already pointed to Reddick's dominant run as fuel for the whole organization, saying last year's tough stretch lit a fire internally that's been burning ever since. "I've had no, 'Man, why him?' Bubba said. It's just like, 'Man, when is it our turn?' That attitude right there is what separates the ones who eventually get there from the ones who don't. Bubba's not bitter. He's not pointing fingers. He's locked in and waiting for his moment. If we can break through and get into the top 5, it's going to be game on," he said. So yeah, the practice crash stings. It stings a lot, actually, especially with the momentum this team had built heading into Texas. But knowing what Bubba has already been through and knowing the mindset he's carrying right now, don't count the number 23 out just yet. This team has been through worse and kept swinging. But if you thought Bubba's morning was rough, wait until you hear what Christopher Bell unloaded right here at Texas today. Because this guy stepped in front of the cameras and said exactly what a lot of drivers have been thinking but nobody had the guts to say out loud. Christopher Bell is done being polite about it, done tiptoeing around the subject. The Joe Gibbs racing driver walked up to the microphone at Texas Motor Speedway on Saturday and basically torched NASCAR's superspeedway package in front of everybody, and he meant every single word of it. "It's time to focus on the speedway package," Bell said flat out, per Bob Pockras of Fox Sports. "We desperately need change. We've needed change for a long time." That's not a frustrated driver having a bad day and venting. That's a calculated, deliberate statement from a guy who has been watching this problem get worse and worse and finally decided he had enough. And honestly, he's not wrong. Here's the background for anyone who needs the context. When NASCAR rolled out the next-gen car back in 2022, one of the side effects nobody fully anticipated was what it would do to the superspeedway racing at Daytona and Talladega. The new car came with significantly more drag, and more drag means tighter packs, less ability to make moves, and a style of racing that pretty much removes the driver from the equation. Passing in the draft became nearly impossible. So, what did teams do? They stopped trying to race and started playing fuel strategy instead. Save fuel, track position, hope for the best at the end. That's it. That became the whole game. And what used to be some of the most electric, unpredictable appointment television racing in all of motorsports turned into something that looks more like a convoy with occasional chaos. Bell had a front-row seat to exactly that at Talladega last weekend, April 26th, and he was not impressed. He ended up getting caught in a massive 26-car crash on lap 115, same wreck that had Joey Logano saying the only two options drivers have at superspeedways right now are save fuel or crash. Bell came away from that race not just frustrated, but ready to call it exactly what it is. "It's literally a lottery race," Bell said. "It's atrocious. The strategy is so spelled out that it becomes all about fuel saving, and we try to adjust the stage lengths so that we're not fuel saving. Well, you can't pass. It becomes all about shortening the last pit stop to as short as you can get it." He didn't stop there. NASCAR has been tweaking stage lengths at Talladega trying to cut down the fuel saving element, but Bell said it didn't matter. Fuel saving was still the whole story of the day regardless. "It's a joke. It's a complete joke," he said. "The package that we have right now, you can't do anything. 8 of the top 10 with 40 laps to go were 8 of the top 10 with 1 to go. Stage 2 and 3, when we had enough fuel to finish the stages, you're still part throttle because you're right up the guy in front of you. It becomes a suicide mission of who's going to push the hardest and not get wrecked." That last line says everything. A suicide mission. That's how one of the sport's top drivers is describing the current superspeedway experience. Not exciting, not strategic, just dangerous and random, and completely out of the driver's hands. Bell finished 17th at Talladega and heads into Sunday's race at Texas, sitting 9th in the Cup Series standings. But forget the standings for a second. What Bell said today matters way beyond his personal results. This is a driver with credibility, with wins, with a platform, standing up and demanding better. And if NASCAR has any sense, they're listening. And speaking of teams that desperately need to flip the script, Kyle Busch and RCR just made a drastic call that nobody saw coming at this point in the season, and Busch himself was brutally honest about exactly why it had to happen. Kyle Busch isn't making excuses. He's not spinning it. He looked at the situation, called it exactly what it is, and made it clear he's ready to do whatever it takes. Because Richard Childress Racing just replaced crew chief Jim Pullman with Andy Street on top of the number 8 pit box, and Busch is fully behind the move. "The writing is in the point standings, right?" Busch said. "We're not where we need to be, so there has got to be a change somewhere." That is about as direct as it gets, and the numbers back him up completely. Through the opening stretch of 2026, Busch is sitting 27th in the championship standings with just one top 10 finish, a superspeedway result at Talladega last weekend. For a two-time Cup Series champion, that is simply not acceptable, and Kyle knows it better than anyone. What stands out here is how Busch handled the conversation around Pullman's departure. No finger-pointing, no deflection. He acknowledged what Jim brought to the team, the energy, the passion, the effort, but also accepted that the people in charge felt a change was necessary. "I like Jim. His leadership, his fire, his passion," Busch said. But obviously the guys in charge didn't feel that way. Now the focus is on Street, who isn't exactly a stranger to Busch. The two worked together in select races last season and put together a top 5 finish at Phoenix. That history gives this pairing at least some foundation to build on, even if Busch isn't promising instant results. "I'm not sure we come to Texas and run top 10 right here, right now," he said. "But we've done our due diligence this week." Teammate Austin Dillon summed up the feeling in the shop after Busch addressed the team directly. "He's all in and wants to get back. His next win is going to be the biggest of his career." Busch echoed that himself. "I am fully in and committed. We have to put the train back on the tracks." Street's approach leans away from simulation and back toward feel and instinct. A back-to-basics reset for a team that badly needs one. Bubba crashing in practice, Bell going nuclear on NASCAR's superspeedway product, and Kyle Busch admitting the season has been a disaster. All of it happening in one single weekend at Texas. Do you think Kyle still has what it takes to turn this around? Drop it in the comments and subscribe so you never miss an update.